Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, our fifth webinar in the Circular Economy Working Group series. We're looking forward today to hearing from the TerraCycle Global Foundation, which has a very interesting set of projects. Specifically, James today is going to talk about their work in Thailand. Before we pass over to James and listen about that, I'd just like to give you a little bit more background on the Circular Economy webinar series. And this is part of our knowledge activities, both for our regional technical assistance program for marine plastic pollution and our Circular Economy Working Group. It's an opportunity for us to share interesting projects, interesting ideas with a wider group within both ADB and our partner stakeholders. I do encourage any groups, whether within ADB, whether within our developing member countries, if you have projects, if you have companies, if you have groups who you think would be interested in talking to us, who would benefit from being spotlighted by the ADB webinar series, then please pass their information along to us. We would love to increase the circulation of these events. We would love to be able to spotlight and share more innovative ideas, clever ideas, and circular economy, specifically for ADB, and the way that we are developing this is about understanding the different facets of circular economy. It's not just about recycling plastics, it's about regenerative agriculture, it's about energy supply security, it's about systems approaches, and we're hoping as we move through the next few months and into next year to continue to build the range of webinar activities that we have, the range of solutions, the range of ideas that we're able to share with you. So I look forward to our presentation today. We'll listen to James and then we'll have a discussion where you can ask questions and we can get a little bit deeper into the activities. So James Scott is the Executive Director of TerraCycle Global Foundation. He leads the activities in Thailand, and it's an area of Bangkok that I spent some time a few years ago. It's a very interesting, very vibrant area, and I think it's fantastic the work that TerraCycle are doing. So James, I'll hand over to you and we look forward to hearing about your project and activities. Thank you.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for having me today, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you guys some interesting insights into what we're doing, and feel free to ask questions as well. I certainly want to engage with you guys and go beyond just what my presentation is. I'll just share my screen now and we'll get started. Okay. So I believe that's up for everybody, yes?
Yes, we can see that, James.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So today I'm going to talk a bit about obviously our foundation, the work that we're doing, and how we're working to eliminate waste within the communities in Bangkok and then obviously beyond. So yes. So just a little bit about TerraCycle so people understand who we are. So TerraCycle has been around about 20 years. We're in 20 different countries. The foundation is different than TerraCycle Inc. So TerraCycle Inc. is a for-profit business. The foundation was founded on the same principles, but by a few different partners with the idea of solving some of the difficult waste challenges when it comes to waste in the environment, and particularly waste in waterways and the ocean. We started in June of 2020, and I'll get into a little bit about what we've done since then. A little bit more on TerraCycle. So TerraCycle specializes in recycling the unrecyclable. So going beyond your standard PET, HDP, and the normal recycling you typically see. So they've made a name for themselves in recycling things like diapers and razors, pens, just a huge range of different products. So, programs like car seats and things that you typically don't think of recycling. We're also the world's largest recycler of cigarette butts. We created the world's first shampoo bottle made from ocean plastics. We recycle waste at the Olympics and use it to create podiums and other things for the Olympics. So a lot of different innovative ways of approaching waste. And then we also have a brand called Loop, which does reusables. So helping brands switch over to reusable packaging and trying to drive that forefront as well. So now, mainly what we're trying to solve here today, and everything we talk about will come down to this formula. So what people think recycling is about and what it's actually about and what drives it, it's not the symbol on the bottle that makes it recyclable. It's not even the plastic. It all comes down to this formula, and can we solve it? What is the cost of collecting the material? What does it cost to process that material? And how much is that end resulting value? Is it more or less than the new material? And the problem with many materials that we have, it's not that they can't be recycled, but it's that they cost more to recycle than buying the fresh material or the virgin material in the first place. So this is a lot of times where we're working to try and create more value with that recycled material, or trying to create efficiencies in the logistics and the cost of processing. So, and I welcome certainly conversations about that later, but essentially this is what all recycling comes down to is it being recycled, yes or no? It's this formula that decides whether that happens. So our project, what are we focusing on here? So obviously we're working on, our goal is to reduce waste in the ocean and in marine environments. So we're working on prevention. So obviously working with local communities, working with governments, trying to implement solutions to prevent the waste in the first place. You know, what most people kind of recognize us for is our collection. So putting devices into the waterways, collecting that waste, and then recycling that material, right? And then at the end of the day, we're trying to create some type of impact and ROI to get more awareness and to create value with those materials to make the program sustainable. So why the canals on Lat Phrao? So there's so many places people can go, and most groups you see them going into the oceans originally. The reason we chose the canals is we wanted to go closer to where the source of the problem was. And waiting for waste to make its way down the canals and out on the rivers and out into the ocean, and then hoping it washes up on the beach shore or, you know, collects in an ocean gyre, just seemed to be maybe not the most efficient way. You're really waiting for the plastic to travel this whole journey, polluting the environment all along the way, becoming less and less recyclable, breaking into smaller pieces, and then trying to collect it at the very end of that process. So with this particular program, we're trying to collect it, you know, very early in the process. And it's also because people don't think about all the other things that come along with the plastics. They think of that about that plastic bottle, but they forget what was inside that bottle. The cleaners, the detergents, the different chemicals, the food waste, all these things came with that waste and get dissolved into the environment or pollute that environment. So when we collect the waste earlier, and obviously, of course, we want to prevent it, but you know, here in Bangkok in particular, you know, we're a long ways away from preventing the waste. So we need to work on both prevention methods, but also we need to work on collection and removing the current waste out of the environment. So this is why we chose the canals. We felt that it would be a great opportunity to work closely with the communities that are most impacted by the waste, and have a chance to engage with them and try and change those behaviors. And so this is what we started on. So this is our project to date. And so we started in June of 2020, in the middle of COVID, and we've been collecting every day since then. We've done about 560,000 kilograms since then, which for an ocean-based cleanup is quite impressive. So this is a very large number. And when you think about it, actually, predominantly that was done by 8 people. So it's quite a significant number. Now, compared to land-based collection, these are not huge amounts, but for ocean cleanups, this is quite a large amount. You know, if you compare to what some of the other groups are doing, this is fantastic. The sad thing is that it's there. So now, how do we do it? We have different devices that we place in the canal. So we have what I call our river traps, and they trap the waste and sort of aggregate the waste each day. We also patrol along the canal with boats. And then we do other activities, as you see in the bottom. So engaging with the community, teaching them to separate their waste, getting them to give the waste to us instead of dumping it. And then obviously working with groups, communities, schools, and things like that to bring the awareness. And we're starting to see definitely some changes and a lot of improved behavior changes, but we still have a very long way to go. Now, one of the other things that was really important to us when we started, we didn't just want to, we often see groups focusing just on PET. And we feel that this is a bit of a shortfall because often that might only represent 5% or less of the waste that's in the environment. So right from the beginning, we wanted to collect everything and process everything. Now, this brings up a lot of challenges because you're collecting high value materials as well as low value materials. So of course, things like PET are fairly easy to recycle. There's lots of infrastructure for it. But when you start to get into other materials, that's not the case. And so typically what we do is we try and use the high value materials to offset the cost of low value materials. But still at the end of the day, to be honest, it costs us more to collect than the value of the materials. So we need to look at other types of business models to make these functional. Now, what do we do each day? So the teams go out every day. They start about 7 o'clock. They start taking their route to the different devices and patrolling. And what they bring back essentially looks like household garbage. And our goal is at that point, it's worth nothing, right? The only thing you could really do with it is send it to a landfill, which is what we don't want to do. So what our teams do is we weigh it and track it at every step of the way and continue to sort those materials into more and more specific categories. And the reason we do this is one is we want to track what types of waste there are so that we can be more effective with how we work with partners to implement solutions. The other thing is as that waste starts to become more singular in its waste type, the likelihood of recycling increases. And this also gives us a chance to start identifying new waste streams that we can try and process. We're zero waste to landfill, so nothing from our site goes to landfill. So people ask us, how does that work, right? And their perception of what happens recycling, what actually happens are very different. So what we do is we separate everything that is recyclable in Thailand and everything that is non-recyclable. So the non-recyclable material goes to waste energy. Now, some people in some countries don't like this process. We look at it as in Thailand is there's a very high leakage rate with landfills here. So the option of sending to a very well-run waste energy with very low emissions and proper pollution control is a superior choice to sending to a landfill where sometimes as much as 20 or 30% leakage rates occur. So this is how we deal with the non-recyclable waste. The other thing we're doing over time is constantly looking at new methods to increase the percentage that we're recycling versus what's not recyclable here. So unfortunately, a lot of things, for example, food packaging, the polystyrene you see, even though it often has the recycling symbol on the bottom, it's actually just a plastic identifier. And in Thailand, those, for example, cannot be recycled. We get thousands of them every single day. The materials that can be recycled are then weighed and categorized again. We photograph the process so we can see everything each day. And then they're sorted into hundreds of different categories so that we're able to properly identify them and recycle them. So that'll go down to brand type, color, quality, and this includes everything from shoes to toys, clothing, television sets, fridges. It's not just about plastic bags and bottles. People don't realize that. When you guys look around your house or your office, wherever you guys are right now, I've collected everything that you can see. That includes the appliances, the furniture, all those kind of things. So this is the other challenge. People are dumping everything into the environment. And of course, that creates very complex waste issues to manage. So, and I certainly, again, will open for discussion later, of, what we do with some of the specific materials and what the different opportunities are. The sorting is very critical because that's what opens the door to recycling. So some of the other projects we're launching, so this is a new project that we're actually going to be launching. It's actually the first time I've talked about it publicly. So part of the problem in the canals, for example, is that the waste, they don't have access to proper waste management. Because these communities were built without proper city planning, most of them don't have a proper road access, so they access by small bike paths or walkways. And unfortunately, it's just human behavior, is if they can walk 2 meters and dump in the canal and it's gone in 30 seconds, or they can walk 50, 100, or 150 meters to the nearest roadway, put the bag into a big, smelly pile of garbage. They tend to pick, unfortunately, dumping it in the canal. Obviously, there's groups working to try and change those, but that's part of the problem that we have in the canals. Now, before everybody blames everybody on the canal, the waste does not just come from the canal. It comes from all over Bangkok. There's over 1,600 canals in Bangkok, and every single one of them is attached to drains and different types of sewage and things like this from all over Bangkok. So, those fresh markets, everything you see on the street that isn't managed properly eventually ends up in a drain, which ends up in a canal, goes to Lat Phrao River, and ultimately ends up in the ocean. So what we're trying to do here is actually put in recycling stations along the canal, make them more accessible to the communities, and also give them the option for recycling. So there'll be general waste, recycling, organics, and hazardous waste. And this is a project we want to put in, and we're going to study how much does this impact, and does this work with the community, and what will we need to change to make it more effective. So this one will be launching later this year. And if the program's successful, obviously we'll be expanding it to other areas within Bangkok. The other thing is these will also be serviced by boat and not by truck. So trying to make it more accessible so that we can service larger areas in a quicker method. So this is just a mock-up. The actual designs are slightly different, but you get the concept. So what do we collect? I always like to sort of show a gallery, because what people think and again, what really happens. These are our teams. And if anybody, comes to visit us, you'll see we don't have any really fancy technology. And I do this for a few reasons. It's not just what we collect, it's how we do it is really important to me. So, and important to our whole organization is having a social impact. And if you want to solve the problems with waste in a community, you need to involve the community in those solutions. So, we're hiring people directly from the community. We're working with the community leaders to, identify how our programs can work best with the community. And so this is why you see a lot of it is manual. I love technology, but, my team out collects most of the technologies that we've seen out there. So for at least the time being, this is how we operate. And now, as you can see, masks is obviously a big one. We collect certainly bottles, buckets. Obviously, we get mountains of these, but these are drink boxes from school programs, right? We receive thousands and thousands of these. Television sets. That was a big surprise to me. The picture in the bottom, I had my guys sit on some couches that we collected, and we set up a little, just as a joke, we set it up with a bunch of the TVs that we collected. So people are throwing everything out. And part of it is, I think people don't know what to do with a lot of their materials. The infrastructure here just doesn't exist. And even when it does, sometimes it's very difficult to access. So this gives you an idea of some of the types of challenges we're trying to solve. It's not just PET bottles. It's, how do you recycle a television set or a fridge or a couch, a tire, clothing, the thousands of shoes that we get. These are all the different types of materials. So toys is another big one we get a lot of. Helmets, bedding, as you can see in the background, mattresses, styrofoam. There's many different types. And unfortunately, it all goes in the environment. Now, the other thing we do is obviously trying to change behaviors. So we've partnered up with other groups, particularly WWF and their Smart Cities program. So what we're doing there is, how do we work on the prevention part? So we're very good at the collection, and that's fantastic, but we want to stop that, and we want to put in programs that'll help. So there's no shortage of recycling programs out there, but when we look at a lot of them, they often start with the very passionate people, sometimes a lot of PR, and then what happens over time is they decline. Right? The people don't know what the next best steps are. Everyone's using their own measuring stick, so they don't really know how they're competing or comparing to other groups. So what we're developing now is a roadmap for waste banks and for recycling programs, so that they can understand how they're doing compared to other groups, how they might improve, and to make it easier for them to learn from other groups and to learn best practices from people who have much more experience. So now instead of them wasting a lot of energy trying to figure out what to do, they can direct that energy into how do they take that next step to becoming a green school or to having a zero waste office. So this is a program we'll be launching in Hat Yai, Songkhla, and Bangkok, and we're looking to run into other programs as well. And so I welcome any questions about this program later. And then obviously we also do CSR events, activities, getting people directly involved. To me, I think hands-on is one of the best ways. Pictures are wonderful, but when you come out and spend the day with us, you have a much different appreciation of what we're doing, what the problem is, and even better is people start to think of how they can solve it in their own life, which is one of our goals, right? Even if you don't end up working directly with the foundation, what I want people to do is go back to their home, school, or office and start to think about how they could reduce their plastic or waste footprint, what they could do to be more sustainable, and how they could innovate in their own lives. So this is what we're pushing a lot. The other thing we do with the program is we mentor them for a period of 1 year. And again, this is to make sure that they're successful in the long term. We know that we're not going to solve all these waste issues alone, no matter how many areas we expand to. So we want to help as many different groups and people as possible to also, create their own programs and to create their own waste banks and recycling programs. And the best way to do that is to coach them in their own program. So this is another thing that we're doing as well. Obviously, we work very closely with the government. You cannot do this kind of work without their support. And so working with DMCR and BMA, and our hope is in the future that relationship will continue to develop. In fact, it's part of one of the reasons that we're talking to the development bank in the first place is to find opportunities to take some of our technology and learning and processes, combine them with other projects and with government to try and improve the efficiency overall for how they manage their waste, and looking for opportunities there to develop the infrastructure for recycling and have more sustainable models. So we also work with brands. So obviously we're a nonprofit, and so we're always looking at different ways to raise funding and to fund our activities. So we do it through grants, we do it through the CSR events, but we also work with brands. So this is an example with Pampuri, a local Thai brand. And what we did with them is, help them set up in-store recycling, and then also work with them and their influencers to communicate to their customers how they could better recycle their products at the end of their life. So, not all brands can switch over to reusables right away. People still want to enjoy the products that they know and love. So how do we make that in a more sustainable manner? And often brands see programs like ours as just this cost. And we're trying to show them that when it's done properly and you engage consumers in a healthy way and with good, solid programs, that actually can become a revenue generator and it can attract sales. So in Pampuri's case, they saw 20 and 30% increase in their e-commerce sales. And we've seen this in other programs as well. So for example, in North America, Walmart uses our recycling programs to draw customers back into the store. They know that when they come to drop off the recycling every week, then they'll also step inside the store and make some purchases. And so a seemingly unrelated activity is turning into a very effective sales tool for them in retaining customers and building customer loyalty. So this is something we're looking to try and encourage more Thai brands to do and show them that by providing different sustainable models to their customers, they can actually build a better relationship with them by showing their commitment to actually becoming more sustainable and giving the customers the option to still enjoy the products, but be able to do, sort of do the right thing. The other thing they do and is sort of a volunteer EPR program. So for every purchase the person's making, they're making a donation to our foundation where we recycle the equivalent in plastic out of the environment. Hopefully we'll see EPR, which is extended producer responsibility, in Thailand in the future, where brands are responsible for the entire life cycle of their product. And this is being launched just, in places like Vietnam and the Philippines. And certainly I think it's something that Thailand will start looking at seriously over the next few years. Now, one of the other ways is we've collected all this plastic. So what do we do with it? Now, if we sell it at market value, the truth is it costs us more to collect it than it's worth. So back to that formula in the very beginning, it doesn't work. So what we're doing is starting to create products that we can sell back to consumers, particularly people that care about the environment and that kind of target group, and create more value with that material. So for example, if I take a kilogram of recycled plastic, I might get 10 to 14 baht, depending on the market, if I sell it as a raw material. Now, if I joint venture with somebody or create a product of my own, now all of a sudden that kilogram of plastic could become something that's worth 500 baht or 1,000 baht or 1,500 baht. And so we're, both ourselves and groups we're working with, we're encouraging them to start looking beyond just becoming a collection and recycling organization. Is how do we create products and more value from the materials that we're collecting, and then using that revenue to drive further collection in the future. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. So typically in the marketplace, a lot of groups created bracelets. They're about $20 and they took out 1 pound of waste out of the environment. Now we saw this as quite inefficient. So we created a bracelet at the same price point we created from all recycled materials. It's fully recyclable at the end, and we're able to take out 20 pounds for the very same price with a better product. And now I did that obviously because we want to be competitive in the market, but it's also because I want people to start asking questions in the industry. Just because somebody's doing a cleanup or doing something for the environment, that's not enough anymore. You need to be efficient. We need to start looking at, are these processes working? Are they efficient? What is the return on that? So that was the other strategy there, is if I can show that we're able to produce a higher quality product and take out more out of the environment at the same price, then this means other groups can do that as well. And hopefully people will start asking that. And when people are doing sponsorships and grants, they'll start asking more of the organizations that they're working with, which ultimately leads to a higher impact. So, we started with very simple products, obviously, and now we're starting to branch out. So over the next few months, we'll also be launching other types of products and experimenting with, what can we make with some of the low quality plastics. So, and we're also obviously joining with other brands as well. So other brands are now starting to make products from our materials, or just have their own products where they're doing a similar thing, and donating to the foundation. So this is another way that we're able to raise money. And this also opens the door to artisanal manufacturing. So taking the materials, going into the communities that are most impacted, teaching them how to make some of these products, and then providing jobs within those communities. So one of the things is we don't work with volunteers. It's not that I reject volunteers, but I don't incentivize waste pickers the same way some other groups do. We believe in giving them sort of full-time employment, paying them a fair wage. And this is really what I want to drive. If you want people's behavior to change, you need to show them that they can make a living being more sustainable. They can make a living doing, cleaning the environment or making products that support sustainability. So this is one of the next phases we want to start doing, is launching micro factories within all the communities we work in to produce these products, and then selling them on a global scale. Because again, you see people doing some of this work, but then they try and sell it locally. They don't have the skills or the resources necessarily to monetize it. So we feel that we're in a much better position to sell these items globally and generate more revenue for both ourselves as the organization, but also the staff that's working with us and contractors that are working with us. So we'll see a lot more of this in the future as well. And finally, we're becoming plastic certified. So this is where I think a trend in the industry is how do we standardize all these different groups and evaluate what their impact is, and what are they actually doing versus what they're saying. Marketing and reality are often very, very different. So Verra, I think, is a good step in the industry where you're starting to have third parties audit organizations like ourselves, and verifying that what we say we're doing and what's actually happening are true. This then generates plastic credits that companies can then purchase in a marketplace to reduce their own plastic footprint. Now, this is very important. Some people say, well, this is just a way for them to get out of it. I disagree. People often don't understand for a brand to switch over to reusable or to remove all their plastic is sometimes very difficult. It requires changes in their business model. It requires changes in their products. And these can sometimes be very costly. And also, we often forget as consumers, our behavior often drives those purchasing. So for example, when we made shampoo bottles for Head and Shoulders, the recycled plastic wasn't the pure white that people normally were used to in the brand. And when we tested it with bottles that weren't quite white, people thought that the product was defective. So we actually had to make the bottles gray and change the branding so that people would still buy the product. So consumers are driving a lot of these behaviors as well. So brands, it takes them time to switch over. And so plastic credits is a great way for brands to bridge the gap between what they're doing and where they want to be. Now, it won't solve the problem long term, because obviously at some point as a business, they're going to start saying, we're buying all these credits every year. How do we get rid of that cost? And the answer will be they need to innovate or become more, sustainable or reduce plastic. So the idea is over time, this is what's going to happen. It's still a fairly new market, so it'll be interesting to see, but we do think it's a step in the right direction, even though it's not a complete solution. So what's next for us? So obviously what we're reaching out to groups to do is to start to expand what we're doing. So right now we do about 250,000 kilograms a year. And we want to expand the operation, and we're hoping by the end of next year that we'll up to be about 1 million kilograms a year that we'll be collecting and recycling in the environment. So this is one of our goals, is working with different partners and expanding to other areas within Thailand and also Southeast Asia, and launching other projects. Now, it'll not only be through us as well. We're now offering our services to other organizations. So we've shown other groups that we can collect and recycle more efficiently than they can. So they're now hiring us to run their cleanup operations. And I think this is a good step. Obviously, it's great for us, but it solves another problem. You go to these areas, you see a problem, and there's 10 organizations working on it. To me, this is very wasteful. That's 10 sets of management, 10 sets of admin, 10 sets of equipment. When if we could reduce that and have 1 or 2 organizations and having 5 or 6 different deployments each, that is a much more efficient model, and it brings us closer to sustainability. So we're really trying to drive more partnerships between ourselves and other organizations and joining forces in projects rather than doing them separately. I think this brings out the strengths in each organization. And I think in the end, this is partly how we're going to solve it. We don't need more cleanup groups. We need more effective cleanup groups, and we need more organized groups. And some of these things require scale. And in order to get scale, you need to have a lot more volume. So we're looking at building our own processing facility to manage the dirty waste that is not accepted by recyclers in Thailand. But in order to do that, we also have to make sure we have enough volume to keep that factory running in a sustainable manner. So by partnering with other groups, we're able to expand that collection and get closer to those goals. And again, I'll just go back to waste energy for a minute. So we do use waste energy, but our goal is to reduce it over time. But this is what we want to try and do, is expand the types of recycling, find more ways to innovate, looking for local partners. So certainly if anybody on the call and you know of a project that's doing something innovative, we'd love to hear about it. Every time we add in a new process, that's a little bit less waste that is then going to waste energy that could potentially be redirected into the circular economy. So this is another reason we're going to build our own facility, because it increases the portion of waste that we can now recycle and process. To get more into the detail, that people can certainly ask me questions afterwards. Most factories in Thailand want the waste to match the factory. And the challenge is that they need the factories to match the waste. Most collected waste is too dirty for the recyclers in Thailand. So they say, we don't have enough feedstock. We need more plastic, right? But the reality is because they're looking for industrial waste. Most of them process primarily industrial waste. It's fairly clean, monotype materials. And the reality is that's not really what's coming from the environment. and the stuff that's being collected and aggregated, there's a high rejection rate sometimes because it's not clean enough. So, this is what we're looking to try and expand, is produce facilities that are more designed for dirty waste, bring the quality up so that it can be processed and can produce a pellet or a flake and an end product that can be used in a higher quality product. And as I mentioned before, obviously we're trying to expand our social impact and create more jobs. This is quite important in some of these communities. And again, changing the behaviors. When you work with the different communities and you're not just going in and telling them what to do, you're going in and providing a framework, providing them a job that's around that. And this is what we want to sort of see more of. Not just with what we do, but we'd love to see it in fresh markets and different things like this, and supporting the brands and the companies, organizations that are making these efforts. And that's something that everybody on this call can do individually as well. It's all about your purchasing power, right? When you're going to the supermarket or you're going to these places, what are the choices you're making? Those impact those organizations and their decisions around how sustainable they will be and what products they will offer and what types of packaging. So, and then obviously, finally, we also want to increase our educational outreach. So we're now starting to launch waste banks, both down south and more in Bangkok as well. And these, as I mentioned before, is to try and widen the footprint and educate more people and have more effective waste banks collecting a wider range of materials. So TerraCycle does really well in a lot of the countries because we collect so many different types of materials that normally don't get collected. We want to build the same kind of framework in Thailand so you can go beyond those, half dozen different basic items. And this is, really what we're hoping to sort of see develop in Thailand as well. If anybody has any questions about SDGs, we can certainly go into those. There's lots of other things we do. But other than that, I believe that's it for me for today. So I wanted to finish quickly so we have lots of time for questions. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We welcome people to contact us and come and see firsthand and come out and see the site as well. I just warn you, if you come out, you will get dirty. I don't let anybody visit unless they're hands-on, and it's because I want you to see what's happening and also to appreciate the work that the team does every day. So with that, I turn it over to the other James to open up for questions or answer any that were in the chat while I was presenting.
Excellent, James. Thank you very much. And I mean, what I find very interesting about the activities you do is that you are impacting every aspect to the circular economy, every aspect of the community, the industry, an industry not just in the recycling, but in the product manufacturing, in the packaging. And certainly, your experiences on the ground, I think, are very valuable and very transferable. And I think that it's interesting that you've talked about expanding the activities that you do, expanding the services that you provide, and certainly looking at some of the participants in our calls. There's people on this call who I think will benefit from that knowledge, benefit from that experience. At this point, does anybody have any questions? We haven't seen any in the chat. Everybody's been very quiet, and I do warn everybody that I know a lot of you on the call.
Everybody's
so
always shy to ask the first question.
I will start picking on you if you don't ask questions. But perhaps whilst I don't know, have we got any hands up? I haven't seen any. While we wait for people to pick up courage, James, can I perhaps ask you a bit more about your engagement with the? Well, we have one question. What have we got here, Tanya? To think this started, is there an aspiration to move onward, to move more upstream later on? So I think, James, perhaps talk a little bit about.
Where's the question? I'm trying to.
So we're just looking in the chat.
Yeah, I don't see it.
So we got waste collection.
Tanya there. Okay. So it says the question is, we are open to have the participants interact. Okay, sorry. We have one question. Wonderful work from TerraCycle, and think this started during the pandemic. Is there an aspiration to move more upstream later on? Yes. Now, part of what we do is partly designed by our sponsors. So whenever a grant fundee comes into place, they often have certain criteria. So the funders for this particular project wanted us to focus on marine waste. So, but now we're starting to expand where we're managing and doing waste banks on land, but we'll continue to work in the waterways. And there's a few different reasons for that. One is there's already a lot of groups working on land. I'm not saying that the problem is definitely solved, but there's certainly a lot of groups doing land work and collection there. The other thing is that sometimes it's about awareness. I'll be honest, I could put out 1,000 recycling bins in Bangkok and nobody will notice. I put out 3 devices on the canal and, you know, it gets a lot of attention. Now, does it solve the problem? No, it doesn't, but it brings a lot of awareness. It gets people talking and it starts the conversations around how do you solve the things on land? You know, anybody that visits our site, you know, that's always part of the conversation is how do we stop this from getting into the canal in the first place? You know, why are there car parts in the canal? You know, why are there diapers in the canal? Why are all these things in there? So yes, the next step is to move more on land. You know, various shopping malls, you know, a lot of buildings, hotels have been contacting us, you know, asking us to assist them. So we will be doing more of that, but we'll always remain primarily focused on the waterways. Simply, it's just, you know, where our funders asked us to start. And we think that we offer a lot of value there, you know, with the cost per collection that we're able to deliver and things like that. So we won't stop doing it, but we will add more services.
So we've got another question.
Yeah,
from
I'm just reading this. So what is MSMEs? I'm not sure about that phrase.
Medium, small.
Micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. There we go, Kelly. Thank you.
sorry.
No problem, Kelly.
That's right.
So I cover Southeast Asia for ADB, financial inclusion primarily on the sovereign side of our operations. But we're very keen to see how we can support the biocircular green economy. Your presentation was spot on. As I said, on a personal level, this is fantastic what you're doing and would love to see how we can raise awareness at the government level and also at the business level. And also the public, general public.
Yeah, it's not solved by any one group, and I think everybody here knows this. You know, when I go talk to groups, there's lots of this. It's their fault, right? If you go to the island, they blame the tourists and the fishermen. You go to the fishermen, they blame the tourists. You know, and the same in the city. Everybody points a finger at everybody else. It's all of us. I do think that government needs to lead the way. You know, I often get feedback from groups, you know, businesses, particularly small businesses, they say, you know, if we switch over to this more sustainable packaging or, you know, pressed leaves or reusable packaging, the cost is higher. And then the consumers go to my competitor. And so this is where government processes or policies, when they're coming in to level the playing field. Now, of course, sometimes it's an excuse of the brand, but I think there is some validity to that because, you know, I always say too, if I go on the street and ask people, you know, should there be less plastic and do they support less plastic environment? Everybody says yes. But if I actually followed them around in their daily behavior and watch what they did, their behavior is very different. You know, when they're in the shopping, you know, market, or, you know, they're sitting at Tesco or Big C, they're still buying the product that's covered in plastic. So, you know, they're telling the manufacturers that this is okay, right? And so that's where it gets really complicated. For the small businesses, I think it's challenging because they don't always have the resources, right? Like I often think of fresh markets. If you were to ban plastic bags tomorrow, you know, the big corporates have a lot of resources to redirect. But think of the thousands and thousands of, you know, fresh market vendors. If they suddenly couldn't use plastic bags, you know, they'd have to get pretty innovative pretty quick, and they don't have the margins and the marketing teams and things to do this. So I think programs that support organizations like that and then promote what they're doing to encourage more people to use them. You know, like one of the things we suggested to sponsors was, you know, set up green markets, right? where you're not allowed to have plastic waste in there, and then promote that through tourism and other things like this, so that all the vendors there, are supported by the community, and they're supported by that larger community. And they're going to see that they can, in fact, make a living and do that, and that the higher costs with delivering some of those services are offset by, consumers willing to pay a higher margin, and making something a little bit more unique. But I certainly don't know all the answers to that, and we're really good at collecting and recycling waste. I'm not a policymaker, but the one thing is I know is they need support. You can't, it's one thing to say ban plastic bags and stop all this. It's a whole other thing is to actually get these industries and guide them on what that path is for them. Does that come close to addressing your question?
No, that's very helpful. Very helpful. I'll reach out to you separately as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I won't name it, but one of the big retail chains basically told us every time we try and ban the bags, our customers complain. So publicly, they blame them for their plastic bags, but when they stop handing them out, they actually get angry in the store, and they get upset with the clerks and things like that for not giving them a plastic bag. So it's a lot more complicated than people think, and so that's why I say highlight and applaud the companies that are making those steps, that are spending the money and making the effort, because there's a lot of them out there and they're doing a great job. So
I think also the pandemic really set at least
it set it way back.
It set it way back because plastic equaled cleanliness and COVID free, and so it really is. It's a lot of awareness raising to go back to the pre-pandemic progress that was being made.
Yeah, the problem with that is you're right, because there was this big wave around reduction of plastic, and even the government was really getting on board prior to COVID. And yeah, it's exactly that. It's the people's health, and how do you argue with that, right? People's health became a higher priority, and now I think it'll be difficult to try and get back to where we were before, because you've lost some of that momentum. And I still go out today and see people wrapping things in plastic that really don't need to be wrapped in plastic, because it's just that perception now. That's the hygiene and the cleanliness, right? It's going to take some time for that to shift, unfortunately.
Right. And Kelly, I should also point out that Kunwasana from Pollution Control Department is on the call. Actually has a hand up, Kunwasana. Kunwasana looks after us very well as part of our marine plastic pollution TA in Bangkok. So we do have lots of questions in the chat, but
now they're starting to come. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Kunwasana. She has her hand up. Come on, Kunwasana. Let's. What questions do you have for James? It's lovely to see you.
Hello, James. Swadika. May I share our experience about the waste management? First, I would like to thank you for your great work about the waste management in the Bangkok Canal. So actually, it is the first time to see the picture like this. It's really fantastic, and maybe it's horrible for the waste management in Bangkok. So I think it's this is the responsible for by the local government, but I think it's for the point of view of the policy maker. I think we need to establish the EPR scheme to address the plastic waste management and the packaging waste management, because we see that waste that you collect from the canal is actually is most of the recyclable waste. If we promote the collection facility for the people and promote that the recyclable waste can sell to the junk shop, they will collect, and maybe it's provide the facility for collection or the program for the collection. They will collect and sell to the junk shop. Maybe it's limit to waste in the canal or the other environment. So I think it's we need to move for the EPR scheme first right now, and we will prepare for the final disposal for waste management in Thailand. So we cooperate with the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Public Health to do this together. And for more info about the offset plastic that you calculate for the carbon credit is very interest for me to learn more how to calculate for the carbon credit. Or I heard about the plastic credit also. It maybe is the same principle. If you have any information about the plastic credit or the how to calculate carbon credit from this project, I will learn more from you.
Yeah,
Thank you
let's
very much.
connect on the side about that. So plastic and carbon credits are very different. A similar framework. It's not calculated by us. It's calculated by a third party. So a third party organization. It's about an 18-month process you go through with them. And they basically, go through and evaluate everything you're doing and audit everything you're doing. And then at the end of the day, they validate the certain amount of credits you have. And then every time you want to get more credits, you need to go through another process. So for example, then a year later, I'll do another audit. They'll look at everything we're doing. We have to prove to them that we've collected all that and we did in fact do all that, and then they award us further credits. But I'd be very happy to have a much longer conversation on that, because it's quite a complex topic, and it's a very emerging market as well. I did want to address one thing you said, and so you talked about the junk shops. Now, we've had junk shops for a long time, and it's never solved the problem. So I know this is a bit controversial, but a lot of people don't really understand the mechanics of it. And you think of it this way: is most waste pickers make below minimum wage, and they have, their resources are time. So when you look at for them, and they can collect, let's say 25 to 35 PET bottles to get, maybe anywhere between 6 to 12 baht, right, for that 1 kilogram of plastic. Now, the problem is they will only collect the high value materials. So they go after metals and plastics. And then it leaves the other 95% of the waste stream in the environment because it's not worth it to them. So for example, the laundry bags, which we've been sold by manufacturers as lightweighting, right? The only person that really made any savings there was the companies. And I know this is a highly debated one, but you used to get your laundry in a big HDPE bottle, very easy to recycle and a lot of value in it. When you switch over to these foil packs, and they're first off, they're multi-layer packaging, they weigh a lot less, so it's less shipping and logistics for the company, but now the value of that packaging has dropped dramatically. So that waste picker might need to pick up 200 pieces and clean them to get the same 12 baht, right? So, and you got to look at the dynamics of it. Is they're going to make a choice. Do I pick up 30 bottles and get 12 baht, or do I pick up 200 pieces and get 12 baht? Well, it doesn't take them very long to figure out they're not going to pick up the 200 pieces. And when you get into like sachets and smaller pieces, sometimes those numbers, it can be 1,000 pieces to equivalent that same volume of revenue. And this is why very early on, we chose not to do an incentivized model around, paying collectors for certain things, because we wanted to address all waste. And this is something that I think that we need to start looking at on a bigger scale, not just for us, but the government. And this is what hopefully EPR will do, is it's not just about the valuable waste. It's all the waste. It's the millions of sachets and chip bags and foil and these things that are all getting lost in the environment that have little or no value in the recycling market. So the idea that we're benefiting these people in the poorer communities and giving them this opportunity, in my personal opinion, is not an accurate statement. There certainly is a very healthy recycling environment in Thailand, but it doesn't address all of the issues. And that's where we really need to try and come up with more innovative solutions. How do we address the rest of that? How do we go beyond PET? So, but again, I'd love to have a longer discussion around that with anybody that would love to open that. But James, the next question.
Yeah, we can perhaps have a separate webinar on the plastics credits, because Kumpatropol here has asked a similar question. So we'll perhaps add that to our list.
I would probably bring in somebody from our team that did the application, and then I would maybe even invite somebody from plastic credits for that, because I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's going to have a major role moving forward, in my opinion.
So let's quickly answer Crispian's question, because I know has similar challenges working here in the Philippines, and also if you can pick up on Wendy's question about the social aspects of this. We've just got 5 minutes, so a quick finish off, and then if we can answer some of the other questions offline.
Sure. So Christian's asking about, like, how do you do small scale facilities? Now, I'll be honest, we don't have like a tried and true, franchisable system at this point. We're looking at a little bit more one-off, and I'm focusing more on working with different retailers and joint ventures to find products that we think we can sell in the market, and then sort of looking at the manufacturing part. So, I'm working with some jewelry manufacturers. I'm working with different other types of products, shoes, things like this that we can manufacture, and then what components can be done locally. Now, the cost of these machines can range anywhere from maybe $1,000 US to $5,000 US. There are some that are a bit bigger. We're trying to keep it very low cost and keep the technical amounts minimal, so that you don't require high skill levels. Because again, we're trying to look into the communities of who are the people that might be challenged getting work. Maybe they've got a disability, maybe they've got, poor education, a criminal history. There's lots of different factors. So we want to make sure that the manufacturing is accessible to them, and that we're not just giving them, a crappy job as well. We want to make sure that it's something that they can do and enjoy. So we're, trying to find like more of an artisanal approach to it. But again, I think that's a longer conversation to take offline, and I can certainly talk about the economics of how we're making it work with you if you'd like to contact me directly. So 3 more minutes. I leave it up to you, James, what we're going to ask.
Quickly on Wendy's question, if we can do, because I think it's an area that's important for all of us, is the social aspect of what you're doing. So.
Okay. So Wendy's asking about the jobs and recruitment and training. Again, we looked at, the typical wages for waste pickers. Typically in recycling centers, they hire a lot of migrant workers because they can pay them below minimum wage. They don't need to provide any medical. If they complain, they're afraid to complain. So the conditions are quite poor. And obviously we don't want to solve one problem and create another problem. So again, our approach was we went to talk to the community leaders, say, this is what we're trying to do. What does your community need? And then my next step was, I'm going to be hiring all these people. I'm going to be hiring people to build our facility and to run our boats and do the collection. Who are the people in the community that, would be interested in this kind of work, and that they're part of the community, they're struggling, or they have, some type of barrier preventing them from getting the work that they deserve. And then offering that to them. And the truth is, we have a wait list pretty much for every time I have a position open. I have more people want to work with us than I have positions. And we paid what we call a fair living wage, which we think is higher than what they would get at any of the collection sites. We give them uniforms. I train them, because to me, employees that stay and that are happy are efficient, right? And that's part of what we want to do, is we want to create something where they're proud of their job and they're not looked down upon. And I think we've been fairly successful with that. My staff doesn't turn over very much. We've had third parties come in and interview them. So it's about treating people with respect and not taking advantage of their situation. And even though we're picking up waste, is trying to provide the best possible work environment and making them proud. And I'm not an expert in this field. I just did, to be honest, what seemed logical to me. I wasn't going on any environmental justice boundaries or anything like that. I just did, if I was in their position, how would I want to be treated? And, and it seems to be working quite well. And again, I invite people when they come out to visit, talk to my staff, right? Don't take it from me. See how they treat each other, see how they work. And you'll see a difference than if you go to other recycling facilities. And I think it has a big part of why we've been as successful as we have, and why we've collected as much as we have. It's, and I'd love to take credit, but it's really not me. It's the team in the field that really does the hard work.
Fantastic, James. Thank you very much. And we have several questions still to go. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you very much. But if you have time to stay on with us, we can perhaps address another couple of questions.
I can.
Yeah.
Just
So,
I do need to jump off in a few minutes, but I can run over for just a few minutes. Unfortunately, I've got another meeting coming up. But yeah, what would the next question be?
So we can perhaps Mohammed's question about the products that you're making. I know you covered that in your presentation, but perhaps a little bit more detail would be great.
We started with the bracelet because that was sort of the trend in the industry, and we wanted to create a benchmark. Then we created a frisbee because we could use very low quality materials. But the next products will be starting to improve in the type of quality and items we make. A lot of groups make things like flower pots and very simple items with the low quality, but we're starting to look more at like higher value items, because the thing is you can only sell so many flower pots. We need to start creating items that you know, there's a higher demand for. One of the things is if the product is, you know, hey, I've got this product, I want you to buy it because we're recycling from the environment, you'll get a small portion of the market that'll buy it. If you create a product that is great and people love it, oh, and by the way, it's also made from recycled ocean waste, you know, you're going to have a much better market. So that's what we're starting to work on is, you know, for example, right now we're working with a company that makes like fashion bags and things like that. So we're looking at what we can do with them and how they can incorporate the materials in. We're talking to different startups doing different tech and things like Kickstarter projects to see, you know, can they use our materials in their products? So I think there's really no roadmap other than it's, you know, we're trying to make products that people will use on a long term and will recycle at the end of their life cycle. And can we match the material with that particular waste stream? So.
And I think kind of perhaps the last one, so we can let you get on with your next meeting, is the one from Mafalda. You mentioned that recycling companies are expecting cleaner and simpler waste.
Yes.
Are you engaging with these companies and how they can adapt their processes? Perhaps touch on that one as a last question, and the others we can deal with offline and make sure everybody gets a reply.
So, so are the manufacturers trying? Yes, they are, but you have to understand a lot of times their factories have been designed in a certain way. They work on very low volume, so they need to do high volume with a very low margin. And, you know, so they need tons and tons of feedstock every day. They often run the factories 24 hours a day to keep the efficiency up. And it's just, they've been designed for industrial waste. And that's, you know, it'd be very difficult for many of them to accept the other kinds of waste. The other thing is that the end user that's buying the pellets from them, you know, is demanding high quality of from those materials. So they do need to control what they're accepting. This is, I think, an advantage we have is that we're obviously reaching out to people and looking for products that will accept a lower grade of plastic, right? You know, I think that's maybe not a complete answer, but we're working with them. There's certainly some of them are looking, can they adjust their factory processes? But this is really why we're looking at building our own shred and wash facility so that we can adjust our processes, give them then a raw material that is of a much higher quality than what it would normally be, and then they're able to process it. So I'm not waiting for them to solve the problem. We're going to solve the problem for them.
Excellent, James. Thank you very much. And you know, a fantastic presentation, a fantastic set of questions and answers. I think everybody's, certainly looking at the chat, everybody's enjoyed it. Plenty of opportunities to follow up. So at this point, we'll perhaps say thank you very much and let everybody continue with their day. And we look forward to exploring some more opportunities with you, James, and exploring what we can do in Thailand with our plastics projects and with TerraCycle. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to hearing from many of you in my email or on our social channels.
Excellent. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.